Well, hey, everybody. This is Pete Erickson, the founder of Modev, and I'm the creator of the Voice series, Voice Talks, Voice Global, and Voice Summit. And this is part of our thought leadership series where we have an opportunity to talk with industry leaders from across the spectrum and find out, what they're up to and how they are playing a key role in the future of conversational AI across all industries. And my next guest is on a roll. He co-founded a company called Speechly. And Speechly is a company that has a vision of voice everywhere. And we're going to get into that a little bit. But first off, let's bring up our guest, Mr. Otto Söderlund from Helsinki, Finland. Otto, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks, Pete, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. I, really enjoyed having you all involved at Voice Summit in December, and I was thrilled that we could all get together in person. And I'm super hopeful that we're going to be getting back together later this year. It looks like I think 22 is our year. What do you think?
I think 22 is going to be very, very big, and for
Yeah,
us, but also the whole industry. I think that this is the year that we're going to go mainstream. So that's what I'm super excited about.
I think the table's certainly set and a lot of things are happening. But let's go back and talk a little bit about the genesis of Speechly. And you're a successful entrepreneur. You've led other companies before Speechly. What is the genesis? What got you and your co-founders together to really tackle this challenge?
Yeah, sure. So we know each other with Hannes, my co-founder, our CTO, all the way from the university where we used to study together, and we were quite into computer science and artificial intelligence back then. We were teaching programming together at the university, and we were on a really good tech track. I was then the black sheep who jumped away from that track, and I did a career then in management consulting, founding my own company on that then became one of the most successful Nordic digital management consultancies. And after having sold it and done my 3-year earnout, I then got together with my friend Hannes, and he had just returned back from Paris, where he had been working at Apple building Siri. And he had some ideas of what's happening in the voice side, and he got myself and some of our old school buddies super excited, and there's no going back from that.
I tell you, I love that. It does sound like it's a really good marriage, if you will. I wasn't familiar with Hannes' experience with helping to build out Siri. And I can just tell you just a quick story. In 2011, when Siri came out for the iPhone, Modev was a large mobile developer community, and we held an event talking just about voice and the way that Siri could actually improve applications back in 2011. The developers were incredulous that they could not get access to the APIs for Siri because they talked about all the different ways that their apps could improve if they could add voice. And it was actually that time that I knew, I'm like, that's interesting. And I tucked that back in the back of my head. So a lot of people don't know that story, but that's what really got me excited when Alexa finally came out and there was going to be an SDK and an API for developers to jump in. And so that's why we, started our voice community and eventually started Voice Summit. So a little bit of backstory, not that this is about me, but I think that I had some of the same evidence that Hannes had when he was working on Siri. And so now we have Speechly, because I think Speechly is solving that challenge for app developers and website developers. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. So the problem we set out to solve, and it's already over 5 years ago, was that for you to build amazing voice experiences, we always believed that to do that, it's not so much about adding new channels, it's about improving user experiences and solving end users' problem in a better way by creating new kinds of experiences. And we tried building that with the still current generation of voice technology out there. We were playing around with the technologies from the Googles, the Amazons, the IBMs, the Nuances, the Microsofts, all of the usual suspects you can think of.
Right.
And we noticed that there was a shared trait with all of these technologies out there that was actually holding us down. And that trait was basically, it was the basic architecture of voice technology still today in the current generation of technologies, where the audio is processed in the sequential manner, where it's first transcribed into text. And then when the user is silent for a while, then after that, the final transcript is then emitted. That is then passed on for natural language understanding, where the meaning out of the user's speech is extracted, after which there is the logic figuring out, okay, how to answer to this user. And then only after that one, there is the step, which is the feedback step, actually creating a speech synthesis or another type of feedback for the user. And the sequential processing led into a situation where every voice-enabled experience that you build with the current generation of technologies always actually results in an interaction paradigm, which is characterized by the user speaking, nothing happening, then the user stopping to speak, then some processing starts to happen. So we've all seen these different kind of indicators for that. And then after a couple of seconds, there is some kind of a response back to the user. And this works fine for simple tasks like, turning on the lights or, checking the weather. But the moment you try to do something a bit more complicated, then it actually becomes a bit problematic, because communication is always errors. There's always errors in communication. And even in human face-to-face communication, it's full of errors. People correct themselves. You have to ask the other party, hey, what were you actually saying? Could you please repeat? And that's just normal. And with these kinds of processing methods, kind of like a waterfall processing method where you need to get everything in before you're able to start the processing, it kind of like results in this very clunky user experience.
Sure, it's not a great experience, right? So people aren't going to adopt it. They're not going to adopt if they have that kind of experience.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've said. We've had these amazing big tech companies who, by the way, done a great favor to our whole industry by actually bringing this technology to the mainstream attention. So hats off to those companies. But we're still in the situation where the mainstream adoption really isn't there outside of this kind of gimmicky or very simple use case type of a usage. And that's really because of the technologies is a bit limited, the current generation of technology. So that's why we, as a startup coming from Europe, entered this insane journey of actually starting to rebuild the tech stack for voice technology from scratch. So it actually meant that we needed to go all the way back to research mode, figuring out how can you build deep neural networks that are able to do both speech recognition and natural language understanding in a streaming real-time way. And that, by the way, is no simple task.
Wow. No, you really are taking on the tough task. And there are only a handful of companies around the world willing to take this on from the ground up. And so kudos to Speechly. But it sounds like you have quite a bit of traction in this regard. You've done some initial fundraising, but I think you have an announcement that's interesting as well with regards to the company and sort of funding accelerators. And I don't want to steal your thunder. Tell us a little bit about the news that you just broke and what it means for the company.
Yeah, sure. So we've already been on our path for some time, and it's over 5 years to be exact. And we've already been fortunate enough to have some really amazing VCs backing us up and some amazing angel investors from some of the most known tech companies in the world really believing in our vision. But this is a really long journey for us to bring this technology from literally the lab all the way to the consumers and to the professional users. And that's why we decided to join the Y Combinator. And we are very proud and humbled to be part of the YC Winter 22 batch, which is exciting. And for us, it's just the best possible way for us to connect with the US tech community and with some of the sharpest and most innovative minds in the world. So we couldn't be more excited to be part of that amazing community.
Well, congratulations to you. And just so folks know, you said you decided to join Y Combinator. It's you have to get accepted, and you've really got to prove yourself in order to even get into that community. Y Combinator is probably the best known accelerator in the world, and there are several highly successful exited IPO companies that are the proof points to the success of Y Combinator. So we're excited for you in that journey. Tell us a little bit about the winter class. When does it start? When does it end? And how can we as a community support you in that effort.
I really appreciate it. So it started this week, and it goes on all the way until demo day. That is at the end of March, and that's the intensive period. So that's when you will see us being extremely focused on basically hacking our business and hacking our product, and creating more and more traction. So we will be reaching out to many people in the community, and figuring out excellent partnership opportunities in showing the world what kind of amazing voice-enabled experiences you can actually build. So that's something that will keep us extremely busy. So how the community can help is to be open-minded, looking forward for us contacting them, or better yet, if you have anything that you can imagine that you think that could be voice-enabled and you need a good partner with which to build something that is actually working in the voice space. Maybe you have built something before on Alexa or Google Assistant and you've been a bit frustrated. If you haven't lost hope, I hope you haven't, then reach out to us, and we're happy to help you kind of like create the next generation voice experiences that actually work.
I think one of the interesting things about Speechly is you bring voice to, you sort of level the playing field for, if I'm an app developer and I've got a successful app that's been out on the, iOS or the Android App Store, for the last few years, and I'm looking to start to add some capabilities and keep that stickiness and that traction and grow my audience even further, you bring a level of capabilities to those kinds of developers that are out there. Let's talk a little bit about that in terms of like Speechly's, idea, just in terms of, market penetration.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, voice has never been about adding yet new channels and yet new experiences that compete for users' attention. There's plenty of that, and through the recent digitalization, we're just bombarded with potential options where to spend our time in digital channels. For us, voice is more about how can we make the human-computer interaction more enjoyable and more natural. And people already today, they spend more time interfacing with technology and with screens than they spend sleeping. And if there is a way how we can actually make that a bit more enjoyable and a bit more natural, it will make people happier, and that's really what we want to do. And our approach for that one is thus to, instead of creating separate third-party ecosystems, it's actually to try to enable the developers already building amazing applications, the mobile developers, web developers. Right. And that's why we've built, to complement the Speechly API, a very extensive set of SDKs and reusable components that make it super easy for developers virtually on any platform to very easily add voice features into their product. So basically, if you have a product where there is any kind of friction for the users, especially in information-intensive tasks. So think about tasks where your users, as part of your application experience, need to, for example, be searching for something. It's so annoying to write with a mobile keyboard or start trying to browse through hierarchies or stuff like that. It's just a pain in pain. Mm-hmm. And imagine if you can just replace all of that by allowing them to say what they want to do, or trying to find stuff from very complicated menus on applications, websites. Why can't you just tell the application what you want to see, and it just instantly takes you there?
Right.
Or there's plenty of times where you need to collect some information from the users. In consumer side, it could be bookings or different kinds of checkout forms or any kinds of information that you need to collect. Extremely tedious to do that on a mobile keyboard or a desktop keyboard. Just it's annoying. That, for example, can be done so much faster, just allowing the users to speak and basically see the field populate the form being populated in front of their eyes.
Right.
And also, like professional applications, there's so many professionals today that work on a daily basis, and after digital transformation, they have been required to use so many new digital tools where the idea is that information is transmitted between the real world and the digital world to control those processes. And this interface, how to make the professional be able to find faster the information they need to work in the real world.
Right.
And, how to make the professionals not have to spend a huge amounts of their days just, feeding the information system beasts by providing them with information so the systems can control people. So how can we make that simpler by allowing people to just speak, and then it's the machine's job to actually capture the information and feed it to the right places.
Well, I think what you've described is, it's interesting. As consumers, we're a lot of us are used to the idea of voice now, right? We have an assistant in our house, we have a assistant on our phones, and we have assistants in our cars. We're used to that kind of interaction, but I think one of the biggest transformations that's taking place is actually behind the scenes within enterprises, enterprise workflows, healthcare workflows, manufacturing workflows. Things can be really streamlined using our voice, and I do think what's interesting is perhaps the consumer market is the thing that's gotten the enterprise ready, because we're starting to get used to using our voice. Most of the people in my family now use speech to text when we're texting, right? And so everybody knows there's a little bit of leeway when we get a funny text. It's like, well, the speech to text recognizer didn't quite recognize exactly what I wanted to say, so you say it again, and then finally maybe you have to type a word out and send it. But we're getting used to that idea, right? And I do think that there's an interesting transformation happening that people don't quite see because it's not quite so public, but it's probably going to be just as meaningful from a business standpoint.
Yeah, and I would even argue that it's going to be even more meaningful from a business standpoint and value creation standpoint, because that's been one of the kind of like limitations for voice technology, is really on what is the value that it really creates, And in the consumer side, it saves time, it makes stuff more enjoyable and nicer, but what's the business value of that? How much does, adding voice to the, let's say, checkout process or booking process, how much does it improve conversion? Well, nobody knows, but it does. But how much? There is no detailed number you can say beforehand, and then make sure it's that one. You have to experiment and test. But on the business side, what makes it very attractive is the fact that it's very easy for you to, in a very fast and easy way, to test how much faster, for example, a voice-enabled part of a process is versus the non-voice-enabled old process, so to speak. And it's a very simple business case for you to calculate. It's just,
it's time
savings, times people, and it's so obvious. So I've been sometimes asked for predictions for 22, and one of my predictions has been that I believe that this year we are going to start to see some major announcement by some companies that are finally relieving how they are showing and kind of like sharing how they are actually using voice technology today to be more efficient, because they are using it, but nobody talks about it because the companies really don't want to lose their competitive advantage, being able to be operationally excellent, especially in these, in a way, challenging times, a global pandemic here. You have to be efficient, fast, and cost effective. So why would you want to share your secrets of how to be more efficient with your competitors? But I just believe that it will become so ubiquitous that we will be seeing companies actually, releasing and talking about some of the amazing things that I know that they're building and using today.
Well, I think that there's a lot to be said for, customer experience, and customers are starting to be delighted through voice. And, the lesson we learned about user experience with mobile and the mobile app, revolution is that user experience is everything. And, user experience even trumps design. So if someone has a great experience, they're happy. Do they care whether or not it has an awesome design? I mean, that's nice, right? But the experience is everything. And I think that's what voice is getting at now. Voice is going to be delighting consumers because saving them time, right? So if you can save time through something and it's easier and you feel smart when you do it, that describes a great experience. And it sounds like Speechly is in a very good position to be at the forefront of really kind of this voice everywhere revolution that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think that our kind of philosophy or paradigm is a bit different than almost anybody else in the industry who are really focusing on building these separate new conversational experiences.
They're trying to build a channel. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And there is enough channels already there. There's so much competition for people's time.
Right.
And our philosophy has always been, how to make it more delightful and faster, basically, to do what people want to do, how to get to their goal faster. And I think that's what voice is really about. It's about efficiency. And there is no reason why that would mean that we would need to get rid of the technologies that people are already now using, like, for example, screens. So there is no reason why we shouldn't be leveraging those ones to the max.
Right.
Of course, there are certain use cases where there are good reasons for those kind of hands-free use cases where hands are not available, and sometimes even eyes-free use cases, even though they're extremely rare. There is the majority of potential application domains for voice are actually outside of a voice only experience. So if this kind of like this whole assistant and this voice only conversational space has already now been like growing, and it's been projected to be massive, I project that the bigger opportunity that will be many times bigger than the current conversational opportunity will actually be when voice as a feature will be basically included in every single website, every single application we're using on a daily basis. And that's really the true transformational impact that voice technology will create.
Can just listen to you all day talk about this, Otto. You certainly, you've been living it for 5 years. I think one thing I want to touch on before we wrap is this also has a huge impact from an accessibility standpoint. And is that something that you maybe realized at the outset, but now you're sitting on a technology that actually does bring a lot of accessibility to a lot of folks that are differently abled sort of across the spectrum?
Yes, absolutely. When we think of the multimodal approach, so the kind of disabilities where it's really good at solving are not always the ones that traditional voice-enabled, voice-only accessibility focus on. But there's a lot of other disabilities of really, it's kind of like how to make it easier to interface with technology. So it's all kinds of people who are having trouble doing that. And it can be disability, it can be age, small or large age. There can be many reasons why people are struggling with using modern technology. It's just so complicated. And it's becoming more complicated every day. So if we can actually bring it one step closer to working on the rules of the people, because today, if you think of the user interface evolution, since punch cards, it's always been about at the rules of the machine. So it's the machine who has dictated how it should be interfaced with, and people have been obeying and people have been following. They've been doing punch cards, they've been doing keyboards, which is not an intuitive or natural way for people to express words in any way. And they've been using a mouse, which is already one step towards an intuitive way. And now the touchscreen is yet another kind of generation towards a more intuitive way. And we envision a world where the interface between human and technology is yet more intuitive. And it's the computer's job to learn to understand the people rather than the people's job to understand, to learn the humans. And that's still, unfortunately, also prevailing a bit in the current generation of conversational experiences, which are still pretty much built with a kind of decision tree type of approach, where still if you want to interface with your Siris or Alexas, it's still you need to know the commands. You still really need to know the commands. It's like your MS-DOS or some of your Unixes or Linuxes, where you need to know the commands. If you don't know the commands, it's a bit hard. So that's something that we want to change. We want to make it the computer's job to learn to understand the humans rather than the humans have to learn how to communicate to computers.
I think that's a bit profound, and it's an awesome way to wrap up this interview. It is time for the computers to understand the people, not the people try to understand the computers. And I think that's probably at the core of the mission that Speechly is on. And 5 years, I think people oftentimes don't appreciate when they start to experience a technology how much went into the development and the building of that technology. I think Speechly is a perfect example of that. You built this from the ground up through a lot of knowledge and research and hard work. And I can see you're just getting started. I look forward to what the next 5 years is going to bring for the company. You've put yourself in a very good position, and we're thrilled to have you as part of this community, Otto. And again, we're really excited to see you all back in Arlington in October at Voice Summit 22. But in the meantime, we'll be chatting quite a bit and keeping tabs on your progress. And again, good luck at that Y Combinator winter class, and I look forward to hearing all about it and seeing how well demo day goes for you.
Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate it. And for everybody listening out there and watching out there, if you want to learn more about Speechly, just go to our website, speechly.com. Check it out. Check out the demos. You're going to see something that you haven't seen before. And if you are a designer, a developer, product person, or other type of hacker, then just click on the get started. Start building with Speechly. It's so easy. It literally takes you less than 50 minutes to build something. That's actually what I did at Pete's last Voice 21 event, a live coding of building a voice-enabled website in less than 15 minutes. So if I can do it and I'm not the techie guy, then anybody can do it.
Yeah, so you heard it here. He did a demo at our conference live and built a voice-enabled application using Speechly. It was fabulous. So Otto, thanks again, and it's great to chat with you today. And thank you all for tuning into this interview. And we will see you all around.